Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. The most important updates are coming from Pyatikhatki and from Kamenskaya front line. So as you know, the Ukrainians during the previous days were trying to made lots of attempts to capture settlements like Pyatikhatki, Zherebyanki, and yesterday we discussed that as a result of small Requiem force or probably even the real offensive operation in that area, they managed to capture the first hours. They managed to capture the western outskirts. Today we got more details. There were like two offensive operations in that area. First, the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians from the north and trying to get these farms or something like this, and the Russians, to prevent that attack, the Russians were forced to use reserves from the south, from the western outskirts, and they sent them exactly to these farms. And the farm, as a result of fierce fighting, they managed to force the Ukrainians to step back. After that, the Ukrainians launched artillery attack in the area on this bridge between the north and the southern part of Pyatikhatki, and right during this artillery preparation, during that artillery attack, they managed to pin down the Russian force reserves on the north, and later, during that period of time, they launched another attack in direction of the western part of Pyatikhatki, and as a result of that attack, they entered the western outskirts of this settlement. As a result of counter-artillery duels and helicopter support, the Russians managed to release and to bring more reserves to this area. The Russians managed to bring forces of 429th Motorized Rifle Brigade and of course forces of 291st Brigade, and as a result of small counter-offensive operation, the Russians managed to push the Ukrainians from the western part of Pyatikhatki, and the Ukrainians left back to the forest. Currently, the Ukrainians controls this forest between settlements Pyatikhatki and Zherebyanka, and this is a very nice position for the Ukrainians, and they are able to hide their vehicles there. I believe that there were some trenches and the Russians' trenches and fortifications. If they were not, the Ukrainians had enough of time, more than 48 hours, to prepare their own trenches in this settlement. And starting this morning, the Ukrainians relaunched and started everything from the beginning, but today they have changed a little bit the tactics. The thing is that if you use like armored vehicles, and as you can see, there is a river and there is a forest, so there is not much square to use tanks, and of course they're like they are under control and they can be destroyed easily, not with artillery, with helicopters, with just pods and so on, tank pods, so on. So today the Ukrainians took a decision to use new tactics. They were using the smoke screens on these territories. So basically this territory was covered by the smoke screen, and using that advantage and that benefit, the Ukrainians launched another offensive operation, another tank attack, and they were trying to move on the northern part of this territory, trying to attack the Russians a little bit further, to deep inside this small settlement Pyatikhatki. And basically and also the Ukrainians took a decision to use this tactic of smoke screen also to the south of this forest, and of course they were trying during the day, and currently they are trying to advance their attack also to the south in direction of Zherebyanki. If we take a look at this, but probably, as I understand, these are two attacks is some kind of support attacks, because the most important defense area and the most important part that Ukrainians will try to capture is the defense belt that goes along the road that connects Zherebyanki and Pyatikhatki. And I expect today the Ukrainians will launch another offensive operation, another attack in direction of this forest belt, defense belt, trying to finally completely split this territory in two parts and so on. From the other side, the weather is perfect. The Russians do have possibility to use helicopter support, tank support, forces, infantry support, and probably they will try to repel all those attacks, but As I see, the Ukrainians are not counting their losses, and I'm not sure that this settlement is very important. Petykhatki, of course, if this settlement Petykhatki falls, then the Russians' defense belt that goes from Lapkovo, let's say, to Mali Shirbaki. I'm talking about this territory. I will mark you on the map for better understanding. I'm talking about this defense belt, of course, will collapse automatically because the Russians use Petykhatki, Zhiribyanki, this road for rotation, for supporting. So this defense belt is in the responsibility of operational group of Petykhatki, military operational group of Petykhatki. If Petykhatki falls, the Russians will be forced to step back, and probably they will be forced to step back towards the first defense line that goes along Konovalova and the settlements in the vicinity of this, so somewhere in this area. Petykhatki is very important, but the Petykhatki is not so important to bury your like a very big army. If the Russians understand that it's better for them to step back, they will step back to save manpower, to save soldiers, and to save like spirit of forces to continue fighting. But one more time, the weather is perfect. The Russians use helicopters, artillery. Of course, these new tactics using these smoke screens will make some changes and adjustments in the Russian tactics. And the thing is that I believe that this is not the one area where Ukrainians are planning to use the smoke tactics. As I told you, the weather is perfect and the blow of wind is not enough to reduce the smoke screens and something like this. So I expect that Ukrainians are going to develop and to use these tactics also on the other front lines. Today we got also report from Novodaryevka and Malotokmachka. The Ukrainians made another attempt and currently are doing attempt to attack in direction of Rabotina, and of course in direction of from Malotokmachka in direction of Novopokrovka, Novofedorovka and Verbova. And there are very heavy clashes starting this morning. I'm not sure whether the Ukrainians uses the smoke screens on this bridgehead as well. Probably they use. Today we're going to receive more updates about the situation. And the Russians have already reported that as a result of first hour's clashes, the Ukrainians have already lost 2 tanks and 3 armored infantry vehicles. If you ask me, I'll give you my opinion. I think that the main area which the Ukrainians are focused on is the bridgehead between Kamyanska, Zhiribyanki and Petykhatki, because the Ukrainians have already entered those settlements, and just a question of time and the question of reserves and manpower when the 2 settlements are going to fall. And I suppose and I believe that attack from Novofedorovka in the direction of Rabotina plays the role of not fake flag, but secondary attack, secondary wave attack, secondary valued attack, with one purpose to pin down and freeze Russian reserves and to create picture showing that this is the real direction of Ukrainian attack and that was the secondary, but basically completely different situation. The attack on the western flank in Petykhatki is the primary attack, and this one the secondary, with the role and with the goal to focus their forces on this bridgehead. So we'll see. So we'll see the development of the situation during the day. Now we are moving to Vremivka tactical bridgehead. There were no updates during the previous 24 hours. The Russians were attacking the Ukrainian positions using drones, artillery, and so on. Still, the area and the bridgehead between Urozhaynaya, Makarovka, Novodonetska, these fields are in the grain zone. So for now, we will keep this map as is, as we can see on the screen. Some sources are saying that the Ukrainians did manage to penetrate and got very close to the road between Staromlynovka and Kermechik, but for now there are not so many updates about this situation, so let's wait a little bit, and probably within the next day we are going to receive more confirmation, more geolocated events, and then we will adjust and fix the map. Now we are moving to Marinka, and the Russians reported that there are very fierce fightings in the western part of Marinka. They published another video of ruins of western part of Marinka. As you can see, just the ruins of residential area, but by this video the Russians wants to provide the real progress and the thing that they're getting very close to the western border and the western edge of that settlement. Furthermore, starting this morning, we received few updates from different sources that Russians managed to advance and managed to develop their bridgehead on the northern part of Marinka, somewhere in this triangle. For now, I'm not updating this map because there was just update that the Russians did have progress in the northern part of Marinka, but there are like a lot of options. The source haven't told us that they captured the entire northern part, so there are at least few bridgeheads where the Russians could have some advances, and there is farms on the northern edge part of Marinka. There is farms, these industrial farms in the northern part of this territory. There is a residential area on the western part of northern part, so there are a lot of bridgehead where the Russians could advance. So let's wait a little bit, and as soon as we got updates, we will update the map as well accordingly. And interesting updates are coming from Artyomovsk, Bakhmut. The Ukrainians continued pushing the Russians' positions in the vicinity of Berkhovka, Yagidne, and Klishchevka, and the situation is getting worse for the Russians. For now, there is no critical. Nothing is critical, but the Ukrainians are pushing without counting losses and reserves. The Russians are trying to fight very carefully, trying to save the manpower, and trying to hold just the most important and the most reliable fortifications and positions. So we'll see today the Ukrainians will continue advancing and will continue pushing. Another interesting update have arrived today from the vicinity of Razdolovka, and the Russians published the video how they were bombing and shelling the Ukrainian fortifications, and based on that video you see this on the north there is a Razdolovka, this settlement on the video. There is a road that goes on the corner, and this is the road you see a little bit to the north of that the Razdolovka, the road. And it's basically, according to this video, we understand that Ukrainians during the previous days of counterattack on this territory managed to push the Russians from the edge fortifications, though these fortifications were under Russian control. But during the previous weeks and days, the Ukrainians launched counteroffensive operation. We discussed that operation many times, but just today, few days after, or a few days later, we got the first geolocated confirmation that Ukrainians, as a result of those attacks, managed to push the Russians back from this bridgehead and let's say develop the bridgehead and the territory around Razdolovka. So basically based on that video and that photo confirmation, the Ukrainians have restored control over this part of bridgehead in the vicinity of Razdolovka. So, and this is a very good development because this fortification relies on the forest line, and the next forest line lays very far to the south, and to supply this forest line, the Russians need to cross fields under the open air and under very heavy artillery fire. So as you can see, the Ukrainians continue advancing, and of course the next steps will develop in direction of Nikolaevka and Krasnopolovka. I'm not saying that they're going to do this, or at least able to do this within a day, because right after Krasnopolovka we see the first defense belt of the Russians on the northern Solidar front line. But anyway, we see that the Ukrainians made a attempt, and they will continue doing this on this front line as well. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.